What would you do if a 19-year-old walked into court, stood alone in front of a laughing judge, and said, "I'll represent myself"? Sounds like a disaster waiting to happen, right? But what if that kid didn't just survive? He outsmarted the prosecution, exposed the truth, and forced the entire courtroom to confront its bias? This isn't just another court case. It's the story of a young black teen who turned the justice system upside down, using nothing but his mind, his courage, and the truth. Because in a system built to silence people like him, every word he spoke carried the weight of 1,000 unheard voices. If you believe in second chances, in justice, and in standing up when no one else will, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with me. Because what you're about to hear will change how you look at the courtroom forever. The judge laughed. The audience smirked. But in less than an hour, they'd all go silent. Because this wasn't just a case. This was a reckoning. Stick around. What you're about to witness will flip the whole courtroom upside down. The morning light filtered through the high windows of the Los Angeles County Courthouse, slicing through dust and tension alike. It was a Monday, and the gallery was unusually full. People had come for routine hearings, traffic violations, petty thefts. But one case had drawn a little more curiosity. A 19-year-old black teenager standing trial for grand theft auto and resisting arrest. To most, it was just another name on the docket. To Judge Harold Whitman, it was another waste of taxpayer dollars. The courtroom air felt heavy, not just with heat, but with judgment. All eyes were on the defendant's table, where Malik Jefferson stood quietly. He looked out of place in his gray hoodie and slightly wrinkled jeans, hands tucked in his pockets. No lawyer beside him. No briefcase. Just a kid in a courtroom. But if anyone had been paying close attention, they would have noticed something strange. Malik didn't look nervous. He wasn't biting his lip or shifting from foot to foot like most young defendants. He stood still, calm, eyes scanning the room, noting every face, every detail. It was like he wasn't just standing trial. He was watching a play he'd already read 100 times. His hands, though buried in his hoodie, occasionally flexed and curled like he was counting beats. Or steps. A low murmur echoed from the back rows. Someone whispered, "He doesn't even have a lawyer?" Another replied, "Looks like he's already done." Judge Whitman barely looked up as he addressed him. "So you're the young man who thinks he knows better than the law." His voice echoed lazily across the room, coated in sarcasm. Malik didn't respond. He didn't even blink. If you've ever been judged before you said a single word, you'll understand exactly what he was feeling. Not out of pride, but calculation. From the prosecutor's bench, Marcus Lang, a man polished to perfection, smirked and whispered something to his assistant. A few people in the gallery chuckled. Even a bailiff cracked a smile. The moment had turned casual, even humorous, for them. The judge leaned back, fingers tapping his desk. "This isn't a school debate, Mr. Jefferson. This is real, and real has consequences." Someone in the gallery murmured, "He's going to get smoked." More laughter. The words weren't just background noise. They were permission. Permission to dismiss him. Permission to reduce him to a stereotype. The gavel tapped once, lightly, almost dismissively. The judge's eyes finally met Malik's. "Where's your attorney?" Malik tilted his head slightly, unbothered. "She's not speaking today." There was a beat of confused silence. A thin woman in a blazer, public defender Angela Lopez, sat behind him, her mouth pressed into a hard line. She didn't speak. She didn't move. Her presence was merely procedural, like a placeholder, a formality. The judge's eyebrows lifted. "Excuse me." Malik stepped forward. "I'll be representing myself, Your Honor." Laughter again, louder this time. It spread through the courtroom like a virus. From Lang to the clerk, from the gallery to the corners of the room. A teenager, black, in street clothes, claiming he'd defend himself in a felony trial? It was comedy gold. But Malik wasn't laughing, not even smiling. Because what they didn't know, what none of them could see, was that he had waited years for this. He didn't plan to end up on trial. But the courtroom wasn't new to him. It was home. As a child, he sat at the kitchen table, flipping through his mother's paralegal textbooks while she corrected documents for underpaid defense attorneys. He watched her stress over the broken system, the clients who never got justice because they couldn't afford better. While other kids memorized football scores, Malik memorized precedent cases. By 15, he could quote the Fourth Amendment like a sermon. By 16, he was correcting news anchors' interpretations of trials. Sometimes his mother would test him, drop a file on the table, and say, "Tell me how you defend this guy." Malik never took longer than 10 minutes. So this moment, this courtroom, it was familiar. But what made it dangerous wasn't Malik's lack of experience. It was that nobody expected him to matter. He studied the room again. The subtle hierarchy. The bailiff's resting smirk. The stenographer's bored eyes. Even the court artist wasn't sketching him seriously. Just another face to blur into a background of failures. Judge Whitman narrowed his eyes. "You sure about this?" Malik nodded. "Very." There was a flicker of amusement in the judge's gaze, like he couldn't wait to watch this fall apart. Lang leaned back in his chair, already convinced he wouldn't need to do much. "Fine," the judge said with a sigh, tapping his pen twice. "Let's proceed. Mr. Lang, you may begin." Lang stood, full of swagger and certainty. "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is simple. Malik Jefferson was caught near a stolen 2022 Audi A6, fingerprints on the wheel, attempted to flee from law enforcement. We have testimony. We have evidence. What we don't have is confusion." He smiled toward the jury box. The tone in his voice carried the arrogance of someone who had seen this all before and expected no surprises. Malik didn't look at him. He was too busy studying the judge's every move, every microexpression. The way Whitman's jaw shifted. The way he tapped twice when something didn't sit right. Judge Whitman tapped his pen against the wood. "All right, let's hear the defense when you're ready." Malik took a breath and stepped fully into the center of the room. The laughter was gone now. All eyes were on him, and everything was about to change. 2 weeks earlier, the flashing red and blue lights lit up the night sky like fireworks as Malik walked home from the corner store with a bag of chips and a bottle of Sprite in hand. He was laughing with 2 of his friends, the kind of deep, relieved laugh that comes at the end of a long, exhausting day. The city hummed with noise, buses sighing at the stoplights, horns honking in the distance, someone blasting music from an open car window. The squad car rolled up fast. Too fast. Tires screeched as if they were chasing a fugitive. Before Malik could even turn, officers burst out, guns drawn. "Get on the ground. Now." His friends froze. One of them stammered, "What did we?" "Don't move," an officer barked, leveling a flashlight into Malik's eyes. Malik dropped the bag without thinking, his arms raised instinctively. "We just came from the 7-Eleven, he said. "We didn't do anything." The reply was a shove that sent him crashing to the sidewalk. Gravel sliced across his cheek. A knee pressed into his spine. Cold metal locked around his wrists. The Sprite bottle cracked open beside him, fizzing out like his breath. "What's going on?" He gritted through clenched teeth. "You know exactly what this is," the officer said. But he didn't. Not at first. Across the street, one of Malik's friends, Devin, was also on the ground, hands behind his head, tears welling. Devin had asthma. Malik could hear the short, shaky breaths. "Officer, he can't breathe right." Malik shouted. "Shut it," the cop snapped. A different officer leaned into Devin's ear. "You better pray you're not in that report, boy." Malik saw Devin's eyes widen. Then he turned his head and shut his mouth. At the station, the questions weren't really questions. They were accusations dressed in disbelief. "Why were you in the area? Whose car were you trying to steal? What's a kid like you doing in that neighborhood anyway?" They told him the vehicle was found abandoned nearby. A witness said someone matching his general description was seen near it. That was all. No camera footage. No direct link. Just proximity and skin. When Malik asked to call his mother, the phone had no dial tone. When he asked what he was being charged with, no one gave a straight answer. Devin was released hours later. Malik never saw him leave. Never got to say goodbye. The holding cell smelled of bleach and despair. Another boy, maybe 16, sat in the corner, shaking. Malik offered him a half smile. The kid didn't smile back. It wasn't the kind of place that allowed for hope. That night, Malik couldn't sleep. His back ached from the pavement. But worse than the pain was the clarity. The realization that this wasn't just an error. It was a pattern, a system that expected silence and compliance, and punished anything else. The next morning, a tired public defender appeared outside the cell. "I'm Angela Lopez," she said. "You're being arraigned tomorrow. Grand theft auto and resisting arrest." Malik blinked. "Resisting? I didn't even move." She shrugged. "They say you hesitated. You'll probably get a plea deal." "Did you read the report?" he asked. "I skimmed it." Malik felt something shift in his chest. A weight drop and transform. Not fear. Resolve. "I'm not taking a plea," he said. Angela stared at him. "You realize what you're facing?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, and I'm going to defend myself." She blinked, then laughed softly. "You're not serious." But he was. That night, under flickering ceiling lights, Malik started building his defense. Not with anger, but with memory. He recalled legal phrases, precedents. He mentally constructed the timeline, the arrest, the inconsistencies, the opportunity to expose all of it. His hand shook a little, but not from fear, from anticipation, because the next time someone put him in a cage, he was going to make sure the door didn't lock. He didn't want mercy. He wanted the truth to hurt. If you've ever watched someone get blamed just for being nearby, hit that like button. Malik's not the first, and unless something changes, he won't be the last. He was calm in court not because he was fearless, but because he had seen fear before and beaten it. Malik had never stepped foot into a law school classroom, but he had learned from the best, his mother. Denise Jefferson had been a paralegal for 22 years, working long hours at firms that overworked and underpaid her. She never became a lawyer, not because she couldn't, but because life got in the way. Bills, rent, raising a son on her own. Still, her mind was sharp, her memory sharper, and her principles sharper still. She raised Malik on bedtime stories about legal loopholes and bad faith prosecutors. While other kids watched cartoons, Malik watched court shows with her and asked questions. Lots of them. Why didn't the judge believe him? Because he didn't have anyone on his side. Those answers stuck. By age 11, Malik was correcting his teachers when they misquoted a legal right. By 13, he was reading legal dictionaries like novels. He could recite Miranda rights backward. At 15, he followed real court cases online, tracking how defense attorneys built their arguments. He kept a notebook, handwritten and worn, where he dissected court strategies, tactics, weaknesses in prosecution. If you've ever been the quiet kid in class, the one always reading instead of talking, you know what kind of fire builds up when nobody's listening, but you're always watching. At 16, he spent a summer helping his mom sort files for a small-time criminal defense attorney who treated her like part of the wallpaper. But he let Malik sit in the back of the courtroom during trials. That's when Malik saw the real game. Justice didn't belong to those who deserved it. It belonged to those who could afford it. One particular trial stayed with him. A 17-year-old boy, not unlike Malik in look or posture, was charged with burglary. The prosecutor spoke with confidence. The defense stuttered over names. The judge hardly looked up from his paperwork. The defendant barely spoke. No one asked if he understood what was happening. The sentence came down swift and cold. 5 years. The boy's shoulders dropped. His mother cried, and Malik just sat there, hands clenched, heart pounding, knowing that kid could have been him. That night, he asked his mom, why didn't anyone fight harder for him? She exhaled long and slow. Because most people think fighting doesn't change the outcome. But what if it does? He asked. Then maybe, she said, placing a hand on his shoulder, you'll be the one to prove it. From that point on, everything changed. Malik studied harder. He read Supreme Court dissents like poetry. He practiced closing arguments in the mirror. When other teens watched sports highlights, Malik studied depositions. His obsession wasn't just passion, it was purpose. Sometimes he'd stand in front of his mirror late at night, imagining himself in a courtroom. Objection, Your Honor. Permission to treat the witness as hostile. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury. His mother would peek in, smile, and whisper, keep going. And he did. He knew the day might come. The day he'd have to defend someone no one else believed in. Maybe even himself. So when Angela Lopez, tired and defeated, laughed at the idea of him defending himself, he didn't take it personally. She didn't know what he'd been preparing for. She hadn't been there during the years of silent study. She hadn't seen him write legal analysis in the margins of his notebooks while others doodled. He wasn't just a kid with courage. He was a kid with a case. And now, standing in that courtroom with Judge Whitman squinting down at him and Marcus Lang itching for a win, Malik was ready to keep that promise. He just had to survive the next few hours. Malik adjusted the sleeves of his hoodie and stepped forward, his sneakers whispering against the floor. The courtroom watched, waiting for the moment he'd crack, expecting a nervous stammer, a legal fumble. But what came next made even the stenographer pause mid-keystroke. "Your Honor," Malik began, voice calm but firm, "before I address the charges, I'd like clarification from the prosecution." Judge Whitman raised an eyebrow. "Proceed." Malik turned to Marcus Lang. "You said Officer Daniels saw me behind the wheel of the stolen vehicle, correct?" Lang nodded, lips curling into a smirk. "It's in his sworn report." Malik nodded back. "Then I'm moved to have that statement dismissed as unreliable." The gallery rustled. Someone coughed. A few eyes darted to the judge. Judge Whitman leaned forward. "On what grounds?" "Officer Daniels wasn't even on duty when the chase began," Malik said. A beat of silence. A shift in energy. Lang frowned. "What are you talking about?" Malik pulled a folded page from his pocket and held it up. "According to this preliminary time card I subpoenaed from his department, he didn't clock in until 30 minutes after the reported time of pursuit." Judge Whitman looked to Lang. "Is this true?" Lang hesitated, then cleared his throat. "We haven't confirmed the GPS data yet, Your Honor." That hesitation just told the jury more than any evidence ever could, Malik said, locking eyes with the front row. The tide shifted. Jurors straightened in their seats. A few scribbled notes. Malik continued. "Let's talk about those fingerprints. The prosecution wants you to believe finding mine in the car means I stole it. But think about it. If you walk into a clothing store and try on a jacket, does your DNA in the lining mean you stole it?" Several jurors leaned in. The analogy landed. A man in the back row folded his arms, nodding slowly. "I lean on the car. I opened the door. I was curious. That's all," Malik said. "But I didn't steal it. I didn't drive it. I didn't run." Lang scrambled through papers. "Your prints were on the steering wheel. But was the forensic analyst who examined those prints brought in to testify?" Malik asked. Judge Whitman looked up. "Was she, Mr. Lang?" Lang's silence was enough. "No opportunity to cross-examine," Malik said. "No questions about the chain of custody. Just data with no context. No one to verify the method. No transparency." A reporter in the gallery furiously scribbled on a notepad. Malik walked a few steps closer to the jury box. "The entire narrative you've been given is based on convenience. A rushed report, a missing officer, a one-size-fits-all defendant." He paused, pulled another document from his folder. "And the real kicker?" Malik asked. "The vehicle's owner filed a statement that was left out of the prosecution's report. He said, and I quote, 'The person I saw take my car was white.'" Gasps. Audible, shocked human gasps. Malik held up the document. This was in the original police report. Ignored. Buried. Conveniently forgotten. Lang's face turned red. One of the jurors shook her head in disbelief. He turned to the jury. "I'm not asking you to take my word over theirs. I'm asking you to see the pattern. Who gets accused? Who gets ignored? Who gets erased? I didn't steal anything, but I fit the profile. And that was enough for them." He let that hang. Then he pivoted. Something changed in his tone. Less lawyer, more brother, more son, more truth. "You know what hurts the most?" Malik said, eyes scanning the room. "It's not the handcuffs. It's not the cold bench in the cell. It's knowing the moment I walked past that car, my innocence expired." Silence. And if that sounds familiar to you, if you've ever walked into a room and felt guilty just for being there, then you know what I'm talking about. The room didn't move. Even Judge Whitman shifted slightly, his fingers curled under his chin. Malik turned back to Lang. "I'm not afraid of your report. I've been cross-examined by life long before I stood in this courtroom. And no one, not the judge, not Lang, not even the bailiff, had anything to say." Malik had seized the room, and he wasn't letting go. Judge Whitman sat motionless, eyes fixed on Malik. The courtroom was dead silent. No shuffling papers, no coughing, not even the soft tapping from the stenographer's keys. Just breathless stillness. Even the hum of the ceiling lights felt louder than the people. Lang finally broke the silence, his voice cracking slightly. "Objection, Your Honor, the defense is misleading the jury." Whitman didn't even look at him. Overruled. His tone was cold, deliberate. Malik gave a small nod and stepped back. He had nothing more to add. Not yet. He had delivered his arguments with surgical precision. Now, he let the silence do what words couldn't. The jury was watching him differently now, not as a defendant, as a force. There was no more smirking from Lang, no sideways glances from the clerk, just a stillness that trembled with weight. Lang's papers rustled as he fumbled for a new approach. He cleared his throat, tried to regain ground. "Your Honor," he said, forcing confidence into his tone, "this case still has concrete evidence. Fingerprints, proximity, behavior consistent with flight. We cannot dismiss all of that." But the words fell flat. The spell had been broken. Malik turned slightly, hands behind his back, and met the eyes of each juror again. He didn't need to say a word. Not anymore. The seed had been planted, and in that silence, people began to feel something unexpected: doubt. The same kind of doubt that cracks a dam. Quiet first, then powerful. Whitman tapped his gavel once. "We'll take a brief recess before proceeding with closing arguments." But no one moved. The judge looked around, realized he had to say it again. Recess. 10 minutes. Chairs shifted. The jury filed out. Reporters began whispering in clusters. Lang sank into his chair, face flushed. Malik didn't move. Angela Lopez approached him quietly. "You just turned the whole room inside out," she said. He gave a half smile. "Let's hope the walls stay up." In the hallway, the gallery buzzed. Strangers looked at him with something that wasn't pity anymore. It was recognition. Respect. A man with a notepad asked for his name again. A young woman mouthed, "Thank you." Back inside, 10 minutes later, the air was different. No more jokes. No more smirks. Judge Whitman returned to the bench, took a slow breath, and spoke directly to the room. "Due to new evidence and the court's concern about the integrity of the original arrest, we are granting a motion to dismiss all charges." Lang stood up, already shaking his head. "Your Honor." Whitman raised a hand. "Enough. Sit down." The gavel hit the block. Case dismissed. For a second, it was like no one understood the words. Then came the rush. A wave of noise and reaction. Reporters standing, scribbling, whispering into phones. Someone gasped audibly. Malik closed his eyes just for a breath. He had done it. Angela touched his shoulder. "You made it out." He nodded barely. Lang was still standing, lips parted like he had more to say, but no breath to say it. Judge Whitman removed his glasses and stared at Malik for a long beat. Then he looked down. As Malik turned to leave, the crowd made room. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. People stepped back, open space. A quiet path formed between the pews. Outside, the sun struck him hard in the face. The air felt different, warmer, lighter. Not because the weather had changed, but because something else had. The steps of the courthouse were a battlefield of flashing lights and microphones. He didn't rush through them. He walked slowly, deliberately, shoulders straight. Cameras zoomed. Voices flew. "Malik, what's your next move? Do you want to become a lawyer? What do you say to young people watching this right now?" He didn't stop. He didn't answer. Across the crowd, standing still and quiet, was his mother, Denise, strong as ever, arms folded, chin up, the pride in her eyes not loud, but clear. He walked to her, stopped in front of her. She didn't say a word. She just pulled him into a hug so fierce he had to exhale all the fight he'd been carrying. "You scared the hell out of me," she whispered. "I know," he said into her shoulder. "But I had to." In her arms, for just a moment, he was a little boy again. The same boy who once told her, after watching a trial on TV, "One day I'm going to stand in a courtroom too." Back then, she had smiled and kissed his forehead. Now, that boy had kept his promise. She stepped back, looked him over like she was counting the pieces, then nodded. He turned back to the chaos behind him. The cameras, the questions. He wasn't interested, because the people who needed to hear him finally had. Days passed, But the courtroom buzz didn't die down. The headlines didn't fade. Social media feeds flooded with clips of the trial, breakdowns of Malik's defense, and think pieces about what it meant for the justice system. Teen defends himself and wins. Judge overruled by teen genius. System shaken by one voice. But Malik wasn't chasing cameras. He wasn't posting selfies with reporters or debating on talk shows. He was back at home, sitting at the small kitchen table where it all began. Legal pads covered in notes. Tabs open on an old laptop. Case law on one screen. Scholarship applications on the other. Denise walked in with 2 mugs of coffee and set one in front of him. "You're not done, are you?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not even close." She smiled, but it wasn't just pride, it was knowing. "Good. Because what you did in that courtroom, that wasn't just about you. That was about all the ones who didn't have the words." He nodded, eyes still locked on the screen. "I'm writing something new." "The next trial?" He looked up. "No. A guide. For kids like me. How to fight back smart." In the following weeks, invitations flooded in. Schools, community centers, even legal panels. But Malik picked his first stop carefully. He chose the juvenile detention center across town. A concrete place with no windows in the cells and stories hidden behind every pair of eyes. The boys inside didn't clap when he walked in. They didn't smile. Most just stared. But when Malik began to talk, not like a teacher, but like someone who had been in their shoes, they started listening. He showed them how to read arrest reports, how to ask for body cam footage, how to request a copy of their own statements, how to question what everyone else accepted as truth. "You don't have to be loud to be powerful," he told them. "You just have to know the rules they hope you don't understand." One of the boys asked, "So what happens if we speak up and they still don't listen?" Malik paused. "Then at least they'll know you were awake," he said. The room went quiet, but not the empty kind, the thoughtful kind. Later, he started a small legal literacy program. After school, 2 days a week. No grades, no lectures, just survival training for the courtroom. They called it Voice Box. And across town, in a judge's chamber, Harold Whitman stared at an empty courtroom, replaying that day again and again. The arrogance, the assumption, the reversal. He pulled out Malik's case file and added a note to the margin. He wrote slowly, deliberately, "Dismissed." Rightfully. Maybe it was the first time he ever second-guessed himself. But it wouldn't be the last, because something had shifted inside him, an echo he couldn't unhear. Whitman began sitting differently on the bench. He listened longer, interrupted less, looked boys like Malik in the eye, not over them. He knew he had missed something before, and he wasn't going to miss it again. Malik had started something, not just a defense, a ripple, a reminder, a movement. And one day, when he walked into a courtroom again, tie straight, license in hand, there would be no laughter, no smirks, just quiet respect. Because the kid who didn't belong there, he belonged more than anyone. And somewhere in the crowd, maybe a young boy would be watching, just like Malik used to. And maybe he'd go home, open a book, and decide to fight smart too. Because next time, it won't be Malik. It might be someone you love. Closing message. Sometimes, silence isn't weakness. But when someone learns to use their voice, with precision, with purpose, even a system built to ignore them has to listen. Malik didn't win because he was lucky. He won because he had prepared in the dark for a moment no one believed he deserved. And when that moment came, he didn't just defend himself. He made the truth impossible to ignore. This story isn't just about one teenager. It's about the assumptions we make the second someone walks into a courtroom. It's about how power can be challenged, not with anger, but with clarity, with facts, with courage. And if you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or underestimated, maybe now you know you're not alone. Personally, this story made me think about how many voices go unnoticed. How many Maliks have been silenced? Not because they lacked truth, but because they lacked a chance. If you've stayed with this story all the way to the end, then maybe you believe in real justice too. Not the kind written in law books, but the kind that's earned, moment by moment, voice by voice. And if that message means something to you, consider subscribing to Story Precious. Here, every story is told to move you, to challenge you, and maybe even change you. And if you're wondering what kind of story comes next, it might be about a mother fighting back, a teacher who wouldn't stay silent, or a stranger who stood up when no one else did. Because the next story, it might not be about Malik. It might be about someone you know, or someone you love.